Have you ever thought about why some ideas just stick in your brain and others vanish? Like a catchy jingle you just can't get out of your head, or a story a friend told you that you still remember?
Or like even those annoying ad jingles. You hear them once and they're in there forever.
Exactly. Today we're doing a deep dive into the world of sticky ideas, those concepts that really grab hold and don't let go.
That's right.
And to help us, we're going to be exploring the book Made to Stick: Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die by Chip and Dan Heath. It's really about uncovering the secrets to making a message understandable and memorable, and making sure that message is effective.
It really is a fascinating book.
Yeah.
What I love about it is that it doesn't just explain what makes an idea memorable. It gives you a framework,
Yeah.
like a toolkit for actually making your own ideas stickier. It's really a deep dive into how we communicate.
Oh, I love a good framework. So let's unpack this one. The Heath brothers call it Six Sense.
Yeah.
And it stands for simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and stories. Each one plays a crucial part in making an idea stick.
Definitely. And they start with the power of keeping things simple. They even compare it to something called a commander's intent in military operations.
Okay.
It's like this concise and very clear statement that guides the entire mission. You can imagine a soldier in the field. They're trying to make a quick decision in a crazy situation. Well, having a simple core understanding of the mission's goal helps them make the right choice.
So it's about finding the essence of the message,
Yeah.
like boiling it down to the core so it really punches through and makes an impact, choosing the most important piece of information first so it doesn't get buried.
Exactly. And this isn't just about fewer words. It helps people avoid decision paralysis. Think about it. When you have too many options, like at a grocery store or trying to pick a show to watch, you kind of freeze up.
Oh, yeah, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Like too many choices.
Simplifying messages really helps people cut through all that and make decisions.
That makes sense. It can be so overwhelming. They have a great example in the book, actually. A campaign in Australia promoting sun safety was struggling. It wasn't until they really found that core message that it took off. They went with slip, slap, slap.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Slip on a shirt, slap on sunscreen, slap on a hat.
So simple.
It's so simple, memorable, tells you exactly what to do.
It's so effective. That's a great example of how something so simple can be powerful. And that leads right into that next principle, unexpectedness. Think about all those myths or rumors or things you've heard that have stuck with you. Why do you think they've stayed in your mind?
Well, they're usually pretty surprising, right? Like the myth about alligators in the New York City sewer system. That one's so weird, it's unforgettable.
That is bizarre, and that's exactly why it sticks. Our brains just love the unexpected. The Heath brothers have a name for this, the gap theory of curiosity. When something unexpected pops up, it shows us there are gaps in our knowledge, and we just have to fill them in. It's like our brains are giving us a little reward for figuring things out.
So the more surprised we are, the more curious we get, and the more likely we are to remember something. I never knew there was a reason for that.
It's amazing, right? And this idea isn't just about grabbing attention. It can actually lead to new innovations. A good example is the development of the first pocketable transistor radios.
Oh, wow.
Back then, radios were these huge pieces of furniture, not something you could imagine carrying around in your pocket.
I know. It's crazy to think about now with smartphones and everything.
Right. But back then, it was revolutionary.
I can see how that would have been mind-blowing, something so different.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was an unexpected idea that completely changed the way we experience media. Now, switching gears a little, haven't you ever had trouble understanding something abstract?
All the time. Especially with corporate jargon. It's like a whole other language.
Oh, tell me about it. Abstract ideas are tough to grasp and remember. And this is where concreteness comes in. The Heath brothers really stress how powerful it is to ground ideas in sensory details. When you make ideas tangible, you make them memorable. It's like you're painting a picture in someone's mind, making the abstract concrete.
I remember they did an experiment about this, right? Something about a man jogging and people taking longer to process a sentence if they were told he took off his sweatshirt first.
That's the one. Our brains are these amazing simulation machines. When we hear that detail about the sweatshirt, our brains create a mental map, even simulating where that sweatshirt might be. We're almost experiencing it ourselves, and that's why it sticks.
So the more details we give, the more our brains can grab onto and remember.
Exactly. Think about movie scenes that you just can't forget. The visuals, the sounds, the emotions. That's concreteness in action.
It makes you realize how important those details are, but what about making people believe in your ideas? How do you build that credibility? That seems like a whole other challenge.
It is. And the Heath brothers actually outline a few ways to do it.
Hmm.
You can use things like testimonials from experts, external validation, or even statistics. But even with statistics, it's important to present them in a way that people can connect with.
Right. Like instead of saying some new tech will save businesses millions of dollars, you could say it will give employees an extra hour back each day.
Exactly. You're relating it to something tangible that people can relate to.
Yeah.
And just like concreteness, vivid details can build credibility because they make the idea more real. One of the techniques they talk about that I really love is using anti-authorities.
Okay.
These are people who aren't necessarily experts, but have really compelling firsthand experience.
Like that scientist who drank bacteria to prove his point about ulcers. You can't forget a story like that. Unexpected and definitely credible.
Perfect example. There's also the Sinatra test. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. One strong example can be way more powerful than a bunch of general claims.
It's like trying to convince someone that anyone can learn to dance, and then you show them a video of that 73-year-old dancer, Thomas Dwyer. That's way more convincing than any statistic.
Absolutely. Seeing is believing, and a powerful example makes an idea believable. Now let's shift gears and talk about emotion. This is where things get really interesting. Have you heard of the Mother Teresa principle?
I think so.
It says, if I look at the one, I will act. It means we connect more with individuals than with abstract concepts.
That makes sense. I mean, you're more likely to donate to a cause if you see a photo of one hungry child than if you just hear statistics about millions of people suffering.
Exactly. It becomes personal, you see a face, and it triggers a much stronger emotional response.
Hmm.
But what about topics that aren't naturally emotional? Like, how did that anti-littering campaign in Texas become so successful?
That's a good question.
Well, they tapped into something deeper than just clean streets. They appealed to Texan pride.
Oh, wow.
They used local celebrities like Willie Nelson, saying, "Don't mess with Texas." It wasn't just about littering, it was about being a Texan.
That's brilliant. They connected their message to something people really cared about. Okay, I am so excited to talk about the last piece of the framework stories. They're literally everywhere, and they have this amazing ability to just pull us in. But why are they so good at making ideas stick?
Well, when you hear a story, your brain isn't just passively listening. It's actually building a mental model of what's going on. The events, the characters, the emotions, it all comes to life in your mind.
It's like you're right there living the story. Like when you're watching a movie and you find yourself gasping or cheering even though you know it's not real.
That's it. And that active engagement is a big part of making ideas stick. Stories give information a context, making abstract concepts more relatable and memorable.
It's like the difference between reading a boring textbook about history and hearing a story about an actual historical figure who did amazing things.
Yes.
The story brings it to life and makes it much easier to remember.
Exactly. And stories are amazing at building empathy, too. When you step into the shoes of a character in a story, you start to understand their point of view, even if it's totally different from your own.
It seems like that would be really powerful for changing how people think and act.
Definitely. You see it all the time in marketing. Like, remember the story of Jared from Subway? He lost all that weight eating their sandwiches.
Oh, yeah. That was everywhere.
It's a classic example of what the Heath brothers call a challenge plot. It's about an everyday person overcoming huge obstacles to reach a goal. Everyone was rooting for Jared.
It's true. Those kinds of stories make you feel like you can do anything. But stories don't always have to be about these big changes, right? Like little everyday anecdotes can work too.
Oh, absolutely. Like the story about the professor who used a maroon portfolio to pitch his idea for a pen-based computer.
I love that one. Such a simple story, but it really got his vision across.
And it worked. He got millions in investments. That's the power of a good story.
It seems like stories can be so persuasive because they tap into our emotions and we get so caught up in the story that we're more open to the message.
You're right on the money. But there are so many stories out there. How do you pick the right one to make your idea stick? Well, it helps to understand the different types of stories. The Heath brothers talk about 3 basic plots that are really good at inspiring people and getting them motivated.
Oh, this is getting good. Tell me all about these plot types.
The first is the challenge plot, like the Jared story we talked about. These stories are about overcoming obstacles and achieving what seem like impossible goals. They make you believe that you can conquer your own challenges.
I love those.
Next is the connection plot.
Okay.
These are about relationships, bringing people together and finding common ground, like those heartwarming stories you hear about people from different backgrounds coming together to help each other.
Like the Liz Lerman Dance Exchange. They bring dancers of all ages and abilities together and create these amazing performances. It shows how powerful art can be in connecting people.
Exactly. Connection plots tap into that basic need we all have to belong and remind us of the power of human connection. And finally, you have the creativity plot. These are stories about innovation, about being clever, and finding brand new solutions to old problems, like the story about the Ingersoll Rand grinder team.
Oh, yeah. They used that drag test to figure out what material to use. It was a really creative solution and showed that the company valued out-of-the-box thinking.
Exactly. What's really cool about these three plot types, challenge, connection, and creativity, is that they can be used in tons of situations, from presentations to just everyday conversations.
That's like a secret weapon for communication. Now I feel like I can tell stories that will really connect with people. But hold on, I think we need to take a little break. We've covered a lot, and there's still more to come. We'll be back to wrap up our deep dive into sticky ideas and talk about how to use all of this in your own life. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to our exploration of sticky ideas.
I'm ready to dive back in. We've talked about simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, and emotions.
Yeah,
Now it's time to really get into stories. I mean, stories are everywhere, right?
they are.
And they have this incredible power to just captivate us.
Yeah.
But what makes them so effective at making ideas stick?
Well, when you hear a story, your brain doesn't just sit there and absorb the information. It's actively building a picture of what's happening. The characters, the events, the emotions, it all comes to life.
Oh, yeah. It's like you're experiencing the story firsthand.
Yeah,
Like when you watch a movie and you gasp or cheer even though it's not real.
exactly. And that active engagement is what helps make those ideas stick. Stories give information context, making it more relatable.
It's like the difference between reading a dry history textbook and hearing a story about a historical figure who did all these amazing things.
Yeah.
The story makes it so much more memorable.
It does. And stories are also really good at building empathy. When you step into a character's shoes, you start to get their perspective, even if it's totally different from yours.
It seems like that would be huge for changing attitudes and behaviors.
It is. You see it in marketing all the time. Remember that story about Jared from Subway? He lost so much weight eating their sandwiches.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
That's a classic example of what the Heath brothers call a challenge plot. It's a story about an ordinary person overcoming all these obstacles to reach a goal. And everyone was rooting for him.
It's true. Those stories make you feel like anything is possible. But it doesn't have to be these big dramatic stories, right? Even small, relatable anecdotes can work.
Absolutely.
Huh.
Like, remember that story about the professor who used a maroon portfolio to pitch his idea for a pen-based computer?
Yeah, I love that one. It was such a simple story, but it really conveyed his vision for the future of technology.
Right. And guess what? It worked. He got millions of dollars in investments. That's the power of storytelling.
It seems like stories can be so persuasive because they bypass our logical thinking and go straight for our emotions.
Exactly. You get caught up in the narrative and become more open to the message. But with all these stories out there, how do you choose the right ones? Well, the Heath brothers talk about three basic plots that are really effective at inspiring and motivating people.
Okay, tell me more about these plot types.
Okay, first, you've got the challenge plot, like the Jared story we talked about. These are stories about overcoming obstacles and achieving the impossible.
Right.
They make you believe you can conquer your own challenges.
Yeah, let's get the adrenaline pumping. What's next?
Then you have the connection plot.
Okay.
These are stories about building relationships and finding common ground, like those feel-good stories about people from different backgrounds coming together to help each other.
That reminds me of the Liz Lerman Dance Exchange. They bring together dancers of all ages and abilities to create these beautiful performances. It's a powerful message about how art can unite people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Connection plots tap into our need to belong and remind us of the power of human connection. And last but not least, you have the creativity plot.
Okay, what's that one about?
These stories are about innovation, ingenuity, finding new solutions to old problems. A great example is the Ingersoll Rand grinder team.
Oh, yeah, the one where they use a simple drag test to decide on the material for their grinder casing.
Yeah, that one.
It was such a creative solution. It showed that the company embraced innovation and thinking outside the box.
Exactly. What's really cool about these three plot types, challenge, connection, and creativity, is that they're universal. They can be used in so many different situations, from business presentations to just everyday conversations.
That's like having a secret weapon for communication.
Yeah.
Knowing these plots, I feel like I can tell stories that really resonate.
You can.
Okay, before I get too carried away, are we ready to move on to the last part of our deep dive?
I think so. We've talked a lot about what makes ideas stick, but knowing the theory is just the beginning. Now we need to figure out how to actually use all of this in our own lives.
All right, let's do it. Welcome back to our deep dive into sticky ideas. We've explored the success framework, the power of stories, and now it's time to bring it all together. How do we actually put this knowledge into action?
Yeah, we've learned a lot about what makes an idea stick. But knowing the theory is only part of it. Now we need to figure out how to use these principles to make our own ideas unforgettable.
Where do we even begin?
I think it all starts with awareness. Remember that idea we talked about earlier, the curse of knowledge?
Oh, right, that sneaky thing that makes us assume everyone knows what we know.
Exactly. It's like when you're trying to explain something to someone and you get frustrated because they just don't get it. But you forget that they don't have all the background information you do.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, so how do we avoid it?
Well, the first step is recognizing it. We need to step outside our own heads and try to see our ideas from the perspective of our audience. Empathy is key.
Putting ourselves in their shoes. That sounds simple enough, but I bet it's harder than it seems.
It definitely takes practice. But the good news is the success checklist can be a really helpful tool for fighting that curse of knowledge. Before you share an idea, ask yourself, is it simple, unexpected, concrete, credible? Does it evoke emotions? Can you tell a story to illustrate it?
It's like a pre-flight checklist for our ideas, making sure we've got everything covered.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use templates or frameworks. Sometimes creativity thrives within structure, and the success framework gives you that solid foundation for making your ideas stick.
That makes me feel a lot more confident. But what about when we get stuck? Like when you're trying to come up with a sticky idea, but nothing seems to work.
That happens to everyone. One of the best things you can do is become a student of stickiness yourself. Pay attention to the ideas that grab your attention in the real world. Catchy slogans, viral videos, those stories you can't forget.
So observe what works and ask yourself, what makes this stick? It's like reverse engineering a sticky idea to understand how it works.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of good speaking skills. The way you deliver an idea can be just as important as the idea itself.
That reminds me of that study the Heath brothers talked about with Stanford students giving persuasive speeches. The ones who used vivid examples and told stories were much more successful than the ones who just gave dry facts and figures.
Absolutely. It's about bringing your ideas to life. Engaging delivery, paired with a sticky idea, can be an incredibly powerful combination.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive into sticky ideas, and I feel so inspired. But before we go, what's the key takeaway for our listeners? How can they make their own ideas unforgettable?
The great thing about sticky ideas is that they have the power to inspire, motivate, persuade, and even change the world. And by understanding the principles we've talked about today, anyone can become a more effective communicator.
It's not about magic. It's about understanding how our minds work and creating messages that truly resonate.
And that brings us to our final thought. What's an idea you want to make stick? What message do you want to share with the world? What impact do you want to make? Now that you know the secrets of success, how will you use them?
The toolkit is in your hands. It's time to go out there and create some sticky ideas. And if you want to learn more, be sure to check out Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. It's full of amazing insights and examples. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making your ideas unforgettable. Until next time.